Hello, and welcome to your Design SteamNR lesson on eyewear design. Just to get started, we're going to download an image. So we're going to click Chrome, we're going to go into Google, we're going to type in Nike, logo pops up automatically. So we'll search that, we'll go under Images, we're going to go under Tools, because we want to get a larger size image. The big thing here is we want to make sure that we have a nice, clean, and crisp logo. So let's open this up, and that looks a little grainy, and that's not going to work. So we're going to X out of this and we're going to go search for a better image. That one looks great. No background, very big. Yep, that's perfect. So we're going to drop and drag this over to our desktop. So we'll X out of here because we don't need this anymore. And we're going to open that image using Illustrator. We'll go into here and open it with Illustrator. It'll open right away. And we're going to take the hand selection tool. It's right here. And that's so that we can move around our picture frame and see where we are. And we have the magnifying lens here. We're going to go plus minus, plus minus. That allows us to zoom in and out by holding Option. Now we can scale this holding the open arrow button. And if you notice, we're scaling it and it looks about even, but we don't really know. And it's really important that we can go back and forth. So we're going to undo that because this could happen. You could completely smush this thing and that's not going to work. So that's really key, this Command Z. You're going to use that again and again, so pay attention. And we're holding the Shift key down now, and that's allowing us to scale this proportionally. That just means that we're not changing any of the overall relationships of the points in this image. So let's zoom in, again using the magnifying lens, so we can really see this, and that looks pretty good. We can work within this. And now we're going to click the Pen tool. So by selecting the Pen tool, we are making points, and we're basically drawing lines that we'll be using to connect this shape. Now I hit Escape, and that lets me get out of that pen tool, and I can click the open arrow, and now I can delete that point. So it's as if this never happened. Okay, because we really need to set up our working plane. So we're going to go into rulers. We're going to say, show me the rulers. It looks like I'm in inches. I'm going to right click this, and I'm going to make it millimeters because it's really important to know where you are. And I'm going to try and line up my image so it's close to that 200 mark in millimeters. So you can kind of see me pushing and pulling this so that it just fits about right. Now we're going to select the pen tool, and now we can get working. So we're going to make the rough outline of our shape because we want a solid shape when we're done. So we're really just connecting these lines. And that's going to allow us to quickly see this shape emerge. But I can't see anything because it's creating this shape in white. So I hit Escape. And I can have lines, that's me hitting the outline bar, but I really don't want to see any color. I want this to be very visible because I'm copying something. So notice it goes to this solid bar. That's when you're linking a point. So that circle means I've closed the shape. So now I have a solid shape. Now we're going to click the Anchor Point tool. And this is going to allow us to actually make curves and drag these anchors, or toggles as I like to call them, into the position we want. So you can move them back and forth by selecting that closed arrow button. And we can finesse this until we start to really get the shape of the swoosh, as it's called. Now, select the anchor tool, and again, drag it so that you have the anchors where you think they should approximately be, and that looks pretty close. It's pretty good so far. Now, if I select that, I have the entire shape. You can see it by that box. But if I have the closed arrow, you see I only am selecting points, and that's very important for when I'm going around and tracing things. I want to make sure that I'm only changing those points that I need. So once I have this shape pretty roughed out, I'm going to start zooming in and out just to get a better eye on where the shape really curves and how these toggle points or anchor points relate to one another. So again, you're going to have to convert a lot of these because you don't want them to be straight line connections. You want a little bit of a curvature that connects both of these points here, because that's a big swooping curve. So in order to make that, we have to push and pull where these curves actually happen in space. All right, so this is just going to take a little bit more finessing back and forth, and you'll find that sometimes you need to move a point further over, or you might need to drag something out further than you expected, but the key is just to make sure that it outlines the logo perfectly. We want to get as close to how this actually looks as possible because this is supposed to be a one-to-one representation of that logo. So that's another thing that'll happen. It'll twist over on itself, so you always want to make sure that those anchors are going in the correct direction. So it's starting to look pretty good. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but we're getting there. We're going to have to move some of our points back and forth, but the key is really just have as few points as possible to make this overall shape, because that's really how you're going to get the smoothest curve. Great, so I'm going to zoom out so that I can actually see what it is that I'm working on, and it looks like that point's not really lined up. So again, I'm going to use that closed arrow tool, and I'm going to just move that tail end of this logo down until it's about there. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to mess around with these toggle points again, because it looks like since I've moved that, the relationships have changed slightly. Great. So again, I'm going to undo things that I don't like, and you can always use the Command Z, but now I'm going to actually select a color. So I've used the color selection tool to place this red logo on top, and over here I've changed it to the line setting that we had before. I really want to see none of that black that's behind there. I want to cover that with the red so that I know that this shape is exactly to scale of my logo and that everything really matches up. So we're just going to move some of these points again, and you shouldn't see any black when we're done. You should really, only see the red. Great. That looks pretty good. And again, we're going to come up here, and that looks like it's not quite where it needs to be, so we're just going to move it back. Like I said, sometimes you'll have to move the whole point. You'll check the relationships again and again just to make sure that everything lines up. And if you look in here, it looks like it's just not perfectly aligned, so we're going to zoom in. And as you can tell, again, this is just an image that we're copying. It's not as clean and precise as our vector art, so there's not really a great way that I can see this being exactly in the center of that. Unless I zoom in and I kind of approximate it, it's very much interpretive. So I'm going to find a middle point for that, and I'm going to go by the last point that it has, because I can assume that that's really where that point ends. And I'm going to zoom out and make sure that everything aligns. And it looks pretty good. I would say that for our first try, this is really about where it needs to be. And we're going to select the entire thing and move it away, and we're going to delete the photo underneath it, because we don't need that anymore. Now we have our vector art. I can always, of course, undo or redo me clearing it, but I just hit the Command Z button there, so you can see that you don't always have to pull up the window. So we're going to move this down, and now it's time to save it. So we're going to save it as an Illustrator file. We want to make sure we have the right file name, and where we save it is also very important. I'm going to save this to the desktop for now, so I want that to be easily agreed on for all of us, and put it in the Illustrator format. Now, there are a lot of features in here, but I want you to pay attention to just creating a compatible document. I want to be able to move this around. Now we'll export as, and this we get to select different file formats besides Illustrator and PDF. Here we're going to go in and we're going to say, okay, I want you also on the desktop, but first I want to make sure that you are a JPEG. So this is an image that I can use almost anywhere. So we have our JPEG file. Now we get to decide, is it in a color mode that's RGB, CMYK, or is it a grayscale file? We're going to select RGB because it is red and we want to continue, having this look like it should. And medium and high and maximum all have their range of quality. And over here is DPI, so how many dots per inch. And I want to select 300 because that's really important. But if you notice, my maximum is only 8, and that doesn't seem right. So I'm going to drag it up to 10 because I really want this to be the best image it can. And I'm going to go back into export as, and I'm going to make this into a DXF file. So a DXF file, or an AutoCAD formatted file, is how I'm going to talk to my laser. But before I do that, I need to make sure that this is a line file, because really the most important thing for me is to know the line width that my laser will use. So I can increase this, and as you can tell, these line widths, they matter because it starts to change the overall shape. Now, my laser's diameter is 0.076 millimeters, and I'm going to type that in millimeters, and it'll convert it directly to points. So it's 0.215 points. And I'm going to use that to tell my laser exactly where it's cutting. So now I'll go into export as and save my DXF file. And I'm going to tell it to go to the desktop, even though I could select any of those. And I'm going to export it. And now we really want to pay attention to the scale and the units. Make sure everything is exactly as we want it. True colors, yep. Everything seems to be good. And once that's saved, let's just minimize this and let's go and look at our file. So we have our original, we have our JPEG of what we made, we have our Illustrator native file, and we have our DXF. So when we quickly go over this, you notice in the DXF file we have a lot going on with just numbers. So that's going to be how our laser actually communicates what it is that we're doing.